Spain and Portugal are two very popular countries that have drawn a lot of foreigners to relocate there in past years. And for many people who are looking to choose between one or the other, they may look very similar on the surface. And whilst there are many similarities, there are things that set Spain and Portugal apart in terms of the way of life and doing things. So in this video, I'm joined by Kalie from Expats Everywhere and Key, and we're going to talk about our daily lives and our experiences of both Portugal and Spain, compare the two and see where there are similarities, where there are differences, and what kind of life you can expect in either country to help you decide whether Spain or Portugal is right for you. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, guys. And with that said, let's get right into it. All right, Kalie, great to have you on the channel. Looking forward to talking with you again today.
Thanks for having me. It's always great having a chat with you.
Yeah, likewise, definitely. Yeah, and our conversation for today, life in Spain versus Portugal. I can obviously give the Spain side. You're very familiar with Portugal, but you do also have the experience of Spain as well, if I'm not mistaken. So you've got, you've seen the best of both, and you can give us the full picture, maybe.
Maybe the worst of both as well. I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, also as well. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Very good. Yes. I mean, let's get into it. Yeah, this is not like this is not going to be a formal, like a proper kind of structured interview. Kalie and I, we're essentially going to talk about what our experiences have been like in Spain and Portugal, with the hope that you watching, you get an idea and feel as to what you can expect in both countries if you're torn between both of them. So, Kalie, you're obviously from the US. I'm from the UK. How was your experience when you first arrived in Portugal versus what you expected and what you'd researched and heard about?
Yeah. So, I mean, mine was probably a little unconventional because I think some people, or a lot of people, move from the US to Portugal. And some, it's the first place they've ever lived abroad. Some have never even been to Portugal, and they just, they research and they think that's where I want to live, and they move, which is great. Like, I wouldn't say don't do that. It's for some, it's not for others. But my husband and I have been abroad since 2009, and we lived in lots of different places, and Spain being one of them. So when we lived in Spain, we traveled to Portugal. So we were familiar with Portugal and the differences kind of there. But, traveling is very different than living in a place. So I think when we moved here, we had an idea of what it would be like. And we always knew we wanted to move to Porto because in our travels, we just fell in love with the city of Porto. So no turning back from there. We're very happy with that decision. We've been here over 5 years and have traveled a lot of Portugal, and would still say that Porto is our number one city, and we're very happy to live here. But we were quite familiar with the country. So nothing was too shocking or crazy. We had moved from Singapore. So obviously there's differences there, weather, culture, and so on. So there was, an adaptation to that. But since we lived in Spain and we knew the Iberian Peninsula quite well, it was a pretty easy move for us. But again, like I said, traveling to a place and researching a place is quite different than living in a place. And you go through that honeymoon stage of when you first move, and it's everything that you remember from your travels and your research. But then as life sets in, things change a little bit and it gets a little different. But I mean, for us, it was quite an easy transition.
Yeah, particularly having that experience visiting before. And culturally, I think Spain and Portugal are not too dissimilar. Obviously there are differences, but on a broad level, it's a very similar way of life and a very similar mentality and mindset. So
yeah,
I think
that
also
they are
probably helped.
Right. Yeah, it is helpful. And I mean, honestly, a lot of people when they contact me, like I'm sure with you, they're in between Spain and Portugal. They're like, because there are such similarities. And again, being the Iberian Peninsula, obviously there's differences in languages and cultural things and food, but because there are a lot of similarities, sometimes it could be hard to choose between the two.
Definitely, yeah. And I think it's really in the details where you see the differences. I've got a video coming up, if it's not already out by the time this video comes out, where I go into some of those details a lot more, because rightly, as you said, on the surface level, it's very similar. But when you get into things like taxes, visas, those are things that could sway somebody one way or the other, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd experienced Spain, many times before making a more permanent move here. Having lived, I'd spent, 3 months living in Barcelona, working over a summer, so I had an idea of what to expect in Spain as well. My transition into life in Spain was very weird because I arrived 1 month before the pandemic started, so I had 1 month. Yeah, I had 1 month essentially to enjoy life in Madrid to the full. before essentially being, locked down under very strict conditions for, 3 months and then, gradually easing. But, over the 6 years, yeah, I've enjoyed the time that I've spent living in Spain and having visited Portugal. Yeah, that, as we say, like not too dissimilar.
Yeah. So ours was interesting because we moved during the pandemic in 2020 when stuff kind of opened up and you could actually move because at that time Americans weren't allowed to come to the EU unless they had visas. So like no just travel, right? So we were able to come because we had our visas processed and we could move. And actually the flight like when we checked our bags in Miami at the airport, they're like, "Oh, you can't go to Europe, you're American." And I was like, "We have a visa, like let us in. We're not just tourists, you know." So there was that little fight, but we got in. But the thing is so we had been to Porto a couple times and we knew what it was like, but we're moving then 10 years later after our last visit. And so we had in our minds kind of what Porto was like, but then since we moved during the pandemic, it was very quiet, very different than what we remembered, but we weren't sure if that was like how it was now because, it was COVID. So for us, we lived very central and it was very quiet. And it was actually kind of nice because it wasn't like overrun with tourists. It was like just very quiet and people out for a little bit when they could, but just living their lives. And so we've, since 2020, have seen the city just blow up, like so many people come here now. And it's actually crazy to see like how many tourists are now coming to Porto and not just Lisbon, where it used to just be Lisbon.
Yeah, I think the same has happened with Madrid, honestly, albeit Madrid is the capital. Barcelona has been for a long time, one of Spain's, biggest, most popular cities in terms of tourism. But I remember the first couple of times I visited Madrid back in 2016, 2017, and fast forward to where it is now. And even like when I first moved here, now it's a completely international city hub attracting, major sporting events like, the NFL's been here, Formula One is going to be here for the first time this year. So Madrid has totally changed as well.
Yeah, it has. And we actually lived in Madrid. That's where we lived when we were in Spain. And that was in 2009.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
So, and now that we're here in Portugal, it's quite easy to go there. It's such a quick flight. So we've been there several times since living here. And it has changed a lot since we lived there. And even traveling a couple of years ago, we've seen the change. It is so big. Madrid is so big. I forgot how big it was like after visiting. I'm living in Porto as well. Like you go and you're just like, wow, this is such a big city, but it is like offering so much more than it used to. It's grown a lot. A great place to visit.
It is, yeah. And you talked about flights and sometimes, flying is probably the quickest way, but even by car, I think if you're living in Spain and want to visit Portugal or vice versa, car is very much doable as well, depending on, of course, how far you want to go. But probably on average, you're looking at, 5 to 6 hours, depending on where you are and where you're looking to go.
Yeah, it's not bad at all, actually. I know a lot of people that drive. I mean, for us, like being in Porto, since we're north, it's quite easy to get into Galicia, right? And so Vigo and those areas are really easy to get to driving. But even getting all the way out to Madrid, just this past February, we went to Coffee Fest in Madrid, and we have some friends who they're a family of 6. They've got 4 kids. So they're like, it's probably better. And some young kids, they were like, we're going to drive instead of flying. So we flew because we have 1 and that's manageable. But they, having 4 kids, they just drove. And the initial plan was to stop in Salamanca for a night and then go to Madrid. But when they left on the Friday, the husband wasn't feeling great. He had like a migraine. So he's like, I can't drive right now. So we'll just have to leave tomorrow morning and go straight to Madrid. And they did. So a family with 4 kids under 7, the oldest is 7. So all under 7, drove from Porto to Madrid in one shot. They obviously had to stop, but they didn't stop overnight. So it's totally doable to drive. And they're now looking to have they're supposed to be creating like a fast train between Lisbon and Madrid. So
I was going to say
that'll be helpful.
Yeah. The AVE project. I mentioned it to a couple of people that I know, and they say they feel like it's long overdue. But it will definitely make travel between the two cities much easier.
Yes, definitely.
And thinking about adapting to life in Porto, what was the biggest thing that was a challenge for you to adapt to? I suppose having lived in different countries, that adaptation was maybe easier, and particularly having lived in Spain. But was there anything that particularly stood out as different when you first moved to Portugal?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, since we've lived in other places, you have to kind of learn to go with the flow with whatever is culturally normal. So coming in with that mindset is always helpful. Like you get less stressed. But the one thing that I think is hard for a lot of Americans when they move here is the service industry. It's very relaxed, and it's very, very different to how we know in the US. In the US, your server is there all the time, checking in on you, filling up your drinks, working for that tip, I guess you could say. And here, like, your server's gone, and you're like, I was gonna get another drink, but I don't even know where they are. And it can be very slow, but that's how meals are here. They're supposed to be slower. It's not this quick, like, eat and then run and turning of tables. So it is nice, but you do have to adapt because you can't think I'm just going to run in and eat really quickly and leave, which is hard. Like when we had a baby, because sometimes, especially when she was like a toddler and wanted to move, it's like, we need to find places where we can eat a little faster, because like, she's just not going to sit here and then she's going to get agitated. So when you have kids, sometimes that can be a little tricky, but just knowing that like when you go into a restaurant, give yourself plenty of time, because like eating is also social. So like just relax and don't feel like, the server, doesn't want to serve you or something. And the same actually goes with when you go into a shop and maybe people don't ask like, do you need help with anything? And you might think, well, they clearly don't want to sell stuff, which in the US, I feel like there's always someone there like, can I help you with anything? Do you need this? Like, let me like make this sell. But here it's just like, you can get frustrated because you're like, I'm standing right here and no one's helping me. Like, why is no one helping me? And it can come off maybe rude. You might think, oh, it's rude, but just culturally, it's just so relaxed that's something that I think, took a little time to adapt, especially because we came from Asia where it's not like that. So you had to kind of get into the mindset of like, okay, just like it's a slower pace here. Like people are relaxed, so go with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and I think having seen, because I know you guys obviously lived in Saudi as well,
Mhm.
and thinking about the UAE, I think the service culture from the US has almost somewhat been exported to the UAE as well. So, people coming from the UAE moving back to Europe, when I've seen videos online, often that's an adaptation that they have to go through as well, is coming back to the European service culture versus a very strong culture of convenience that's happening in the UAE.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it, like of convenience. Like I want it now, right away. Like I need you to come serve me, or I need you to do this, but like that's just not how they function here. So you can't let it like get you upset. I think that's what happens is like, and I see it sometimes like people will walk in and like stand at a counter and like no one is even acknowledging their presence, and so they get like frustrated and walk out. But it's just like that's kind of how they do it. Or you also have to watch out if they use the ticket system. They love the ticket system here. So if you walk into an establishment, you don't go up to the counter, you pull a ticket at like the pharmacy and the bank and the post office. So you have to pull a ticket and then your ticket is called. That always catches people off too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, these are things because I've only really experienced the US once, probably about a decade ago. So in the UK, like we have elements of what you mentioned in the United States, but not to the same extent. And I think people coming from the UK, they probably find it, yes, still a bit of a change, but not to the same extent as someone from the US might find it, I would say.
Yeah, I think, especially in the service industry, I think it's a little more shocking. And that's another thing as well. In the service industry, we're so used to tipping. And like, so it's like ingrained in us. But you don't want to come here and like, tipping is fine. And of course, if like the service is good, tip. But like, it's, you don't want to mess things up, mess up the system. So you don't have to tip like more than 10%. Like in the US, it's wild now. It's like 20%. But here it's like just yeah, leave a little bit if you think the service was good, but don't feel like you have to like be like to what it is in the US because you are in a different country and it's not how things function here.
So, in terms of the life that you and Josh have in Porto now, what does a typical week look like? Don't necessarily have to go into details, but kind of broad, things that you do, like the pace of your days. What does a typical day look like?
Well, the nice thing is since we're self-employed, we own our own business, we can kind of be flexible and make our own hours. But on the other hand, I think when you have your own business, like you're always working or you always can be working. You always feel like there's something that you could or should be doing. So, it's good. Like I wouldn't change it. I love that I'm not in like a 9 to 5 type job. I don't want to go back to that for sure. But what we do, like how we live, I guess, is a little unconventional compared to especially like the Portuguese who have their typical 9 to 5. But for us, like weekdays, we're very social people. So, and we like to go out. So if it works, to go out to dinner or drinks or coffee or something with friends, if we can mix it into the work day. But generally, I like to do more evening things just because I feel like, okay, work day's done and then we can go out. We're also big sports fans. So, a lot of stuff revolves around that, whether that's actually going physically. So we're season ticket holders here for Porto. So if it's going to that game or if it's just going to a bar or a restaurant with friends to watch a specific game. So we do that a lot as well. We do have a 6-year-old. So, stuff does revolve around playgrounds and meeting up with friends who also have kids, which is fine because like we've got some really good friends who also have kids. So, it's nice if you like the parents as well. So that's helpful. So just, whatever there might be that can get the kids active so they're not just always sitting at a restaurant. But, work wise, we get up and since we do have a child who goes to school, then we do have like set times that we get up and we have to get her out the door, go to school. So my husband takes her to school. And then in the mornings, generally, it's like my time to do anything that's not quite work related yet, because if I start work, then like I'm in it and I can't get around to, the simple things like around the house. Like if I have to unload the dishwasher or if I need to do something personal online, like for the family or for school for my daughter or anything like that. So, I try to do like mornings kind of slower and then get into the workday. But the workday also varies depending on calls with clients or even meeting people, consultations that I do, checking emails, obviously content because we've got the YouTube channel and a podcast as well. And so, there's just a lot. So I have to be organized. So we have like these mega calendars. So we have joint calendars and they're categorized into the different businesses that we have, and color coded and everything. And obviously it's an app. So I have to stick to that because if I didn't have that, oh geez, it would be chaos. I'd be like, I know I'm supposed to be doing something right now, but what is it? So it's just the calendar gets filled up and that's just kind of how the workday goes. But it is nice, like to try to, when it's the evening, our daughter's home, let's hang out with friends. Let's actually go out and relax and live life, not feel like work is the only thing that we live for.
Yeah, that's great. And I wonder, and I ask myself as well sometimes, because from my own experience, I think the hustle culture mindset, one in general, I think is being challenged, but particularly if you try to apply it in a European context, particularly in countries like Spain and Portugal, you're just going to get frustrated, honestly, because the systems are just not designed for people who are, trying to pursue that kind of life and build like that. That's my honest opinion.
Yeah.
So
No, it's so true. And so I do remember when we lived in Spain, the siesta culture was just so strong. Like stuff would close and you'd be like, I'm just trying to get stuff done. And you'd look at the time and be like, oh no, what I need to get done is closed. I would say Portugal's different. We don't have while it is more like a slower pace and relaxed, there's no like afternoon closing times of things. Does that still exist there? Is that still a thing? Like where like actual places close for lunchtime hours?
In my neighborhood, like you take pharmacies, opticians, estate agents, all of these kind of places, they'll close around 1:30, 2, and then they'll reopen maybe 4:30, 5 for the
That's so
the
frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, because you have to basically. Okay, so it's frustrating if you could only do something in the morning. Like some place, particularly the ones where in the summer where they'll do like what's known in Spanish as the jornada intensiva, where they only do the morning and then the afternoon is gone. During the summer, that could be frustrating because you've only got the morning. But if you're working like in a like a corporate job, for example, like is my situation right now, I follow. My workday probably hasn't changed that much versus what it would be in like the UK. Maybe the hours a little bit, but because I'm working, internationally, like the interactions I have and the pace of work is still, fairly consistent with a corporate environment. Granted, being in Spain, there's a little bit of the general environment like helps you to relax a little bit.
But you couldn't get stuff done in the middle of the day, right? Because like if you take
in the middle
off...
of the day, yeah, pretty much, yeah. Unless you're willing to try and take like an early lunch, then you're gonna struggle. And I can tell you as well, like the streets during that afternoon dip, like there's really not many people around, and particularly in the summer when it's like boiling hot, like the streets are deserted during that time.
Yeah, you have to plan a little more. So that is one big difference I would say between Spain and Portugal is that there is no type of like lunchtime closing that happens from people take their lunch and they do have a longer, more relaxed lunch. So that's different than like the US where it's like, all right, you have like 1 hour and you have to do that 1 hour. I mean, they are longer here and more relaxed, but stuff still stays open. There's still like someone working, like they rotate. So I think I like that a little better. Because if you're caught off guard, let's just say like, I don't know, you're working or it's like you need to go to the pharmacy last minute for something. That's always what would happen. Like I think in Spain, it'd be like, okay, I need to run into the pharmacy. And you look at the time, you'd be like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. I should say it's not all not all pharmacies, for example. There are some like 12-hour pharmacies, and like the supermarkets are typically open like all through the day as well, without having the midday closure. But it tends to be kind of the smaller to medium-sized businesses, let's say, that operate on a more local scale that tend to follow that kind of, let's say, schedule.
Yeah. And I imagine it's quite different than when we lived there now, like 15 years ago. I would think that more stuff is even open than it used to be. It was just always, like the little shops, like having to fix something with your phone or, something like that just comes up out of nowhere. And you're just like, I need to get this done, but I can't right now. But I'm guessing, that stuff's a little more open, or at least every time we visit, it seems like more things are open than it used to be when we lived there.
I mean, in the center of Madrid, probably what you're saying is very true. Like, I don't live in the center anymore. I live in one of the cities outside where it is, and in a neighborhood that's typically like, as you'd say in Spanish, like gente de toda la vida, like people who've lived here all their lives, essentially. So it does still follow a bit more of a traditional rhythm and pace of life. But definitely in like the center of Madrid, I think, businesses are pretty much operating much longer hours than you'd see like out in the suburbs.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said, like you can find like the 12-hour pharmacies, whereas I feel like the US is like, we're very much so 24/7. So we've got like loads of like 24/7, like always open. And I think that is a mentality of like the hustle and the work culture, is that pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens, so many of them are 24 hours. So it's kind of funny that you say like there are 12-hour pharmacies in Spain, of course, but like in the US, there's like 24 hours, like there's loads of them. It's the norm there.
Yeah, there's one in the city where I live. So if you do need something in an emergency, like you are covered, but there's one.
Well, and here, like I would say most pharmacies are closed on Sundays, but they do have, they rotate on who is open, which is good. Cause like and specifically speaking about a pharmacy, because like, something could come up and you need a pharmacy. So there will be like in a certain radius, there is one pharmacy that's open every Sunday, and they just rotate. And generally what happens is like, they'll have it, the little sign, and then it'll be scrolling. So if they're going to be open, if it's a Saturday, it'll say we're open tomorrow. So that, that is the pharmacy that is open. So that is helpful because things come up.
Okay, good. Yeah. So has it been easy to like make friends and, build a social circle? I understand from all your sporting events and trips you guys have done that you have a social circle in Portugal. It's probably quite strong.
Yes. I think the best thing that you could do to build a community is to kind of cater it around the hobby that you have. So whatever you're interested in, that's the best way to meet people. It's much easier than just being at like a bar or a cafe and maybe hearing English or seeing like maybe you have a connection with this person, and you don't necessarily have a connection with them like just because you speak English. That might be the only connection you have, right? But then if you're craving the community, you might be like, okay, you speak English, I don't speak Portuguese enough, so like let's talk, but you might not have anything in common. So this is where I think that hobbies are the best thing. So for us, we like sports. We used to play soccer. We love watching soccer. So it's been a great way to build that community, and we're like-minded. We go and we watch the games, or we have different things to talk about. And that's also been a great way to meet expats and locals. So that's been good. But I always recommend to people to get into something like whatever you're interested in. If it's hiking, if it's surfing, if it's painting, find a group, because then generally it is a good mix of expats and locals. So it's a great way to meet Portuguese people as well. Maybe even practice the language if you want. And then it snowballs from there. Generally, you meet one Portuguese person and something like that, and then they start introducing you to people, because it can actually be pretty hard to meet Portuguese people. And they're very kind, but the thing is if they've lived here their whole life, they're not necessarily looking for friends. They have friends, right? They're not looking to build a community. But when you move to a new place, that's like the first thing that you do is you want to build a community. And so you're looking. So it's kind of hard to break into the Portuguese group, but once you get one or two, then it starts to snowball because they're so kind and they start inviting you to events and everything. But the hobby thing, I think, is the best way of doing it, because you jump right into people who like have the same interests as you, so you can instantly connect.
Yeah, definitely. That's totally been my experience as well. Like joining basketball teams when I've played here, like going to the gym in some cases, like church has also been a place where I've met people. So, and I think it's really up to you to put yourself out there as well, because like you said, people are not necessarily looking for friends. And that can be challenging for some people. I know that sometimes for myself, like in social situations, I do get shy sometimes. But you know, it's a small step of putting yourself out there, and then from there, like you said, like the friendships, you know, it becomes much easier, and you meet new people through a friend of a friend, and etc.
Yeah. I think it's much easier to do it that way than just be like, you know, you're at a cafe and feel like you have to force like a conversation with someone. To me, that's more like, that's awkward, right? You're like, you know, I want to meet people and I hear you speaking English, so I'm going to talk to you like at a cafe or bar or just out on the street. You know, that's a little more awkward. But if you're at a place that's like something you're interested in, like painting, then that's an easy like conversation starter. Or like for us, since we have a child, that's an easy one as well. That's really gotten us into like the Portuguese friends and stuff because she goes to a private Portuguese school. So like that's an easy entryway as well. If you have a dog, oh, that's another thing. Like people love dogs here, so they want to talk to you about your dog. Now, obviously, depending on how well you know the language, how well they might know English, you might fumble through. But having a dog is a great way to chat with people as well. So something that's common, I think, is what's really good.
Yeah, totally. And I think those cafe and bar interactions, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, because I had this experience in the US. Like you see it a lot in the movies. And I always thought, and I always like would see it and I think like, you know, I would never do this in the UK. And it's really rare that it happens here in Europe. But I remember being in the US and like sometimes I think I went to a bar in New York and watched one of the, you know, the Bulls and the Knicks on the TV, and like people were just like talking to me like across the bar, and I was like, oh, okay, like people really do this and make conversation in bars and cafes in the US.
Well, I think
or maybe it was just a one-off experience.
Well, it depends. I think it depends on where you are, of course, what city you're in, and the people that are, you know, in where you are. But if you were there watching like a sporting event, that's one thing that like everyone will talk about. So if you like appear to be there like at a bar watching a game, people are going to talk to you about it because again, it's a common thing. So it doesn't matter like who you are, where you came from. It's like, we're here to support this team. So we're friends, we're buddies, like we can talk. So it kind of depends on the situation and the people as well. Like, so my husband and I are very outgoing, but I don't like tend to talk to strangers. That's just not my thing. But if the conversation starts, I'm open and I'll get going. My husband talks to strangers all the time, and it's partly his personality and partly the part of the country that he came from, because he's from the South and they're all very nice, you know, this is what they do. They talk to each other. Like even like and this is actually super Portuguese as well. Like at the grocery store, you're checking out, and like in the South where my husband is from, they just have this full on conversation, even though there's a long line. It's so Portuguese as well. Like that same thing will happen here, and people just wait. You know, it's just because it's normal, right? Whereas that's another thing Americans might be like, come on, what's taking so long? Like, let's hurry. Like, why are they having a conversation? But it's just normal here, right? So it little depends on like the situation.
Yeah, and that happens in Spain as well at the supermarket as well. Numerous occasions I've seen, you know, conversations just going on, and people are in no rush. Like they'll see you, but they won't be in any rush to finish the conversation as well.
No,
they'll
that's the other thing.
Take their time, finish it. Yeah.
I think that's the other thing that Americans kind of could potentially think that's rude as well, is just like they see you, but that doesn't matter. And so they might, like an American might internalize that, you know, they're wasting my time. And I think it is culturally like how we are, because things are a lot more like, they're a lot faster. They're a lot go in the US. And so that's definitely something like when you come over here, you can't let that stuff bug you, but you do also need to allot the time. Like if you think you're going to get anything done quickly, it's probably not going to happen. So maybe like mentally be like, okay, I'm going to the grocery store. I'm just going to pop over there really quickly. You know, it might not be a quick little run to the grocery store. So just when you think about it that way, you relax a little more.
Yeah. And I think it's part of the appeal to life here. Like it sounds cliche, like the slower pace of life. And, you know, granted to some extent, it will be greater in some place than others, slower in other places. Like people living in Madrid and Barcelona, for example, you know, still very much live in a very fast pace of life because of how those cities move. But yeah, like what you said, if you're going to the supermarket, just enjoy like taking it slow and not having to be in a rush.
Yeah. Well, this is a huge conversation that I have like on my consultations or with clients. Like a lot of people want to move over here for the slower pace of life. And I get it because it is so rushed in the US. But it's hard to like strip that away, I think, once you're here. So you have to come into it being like, remember, I moved over here for the slower pace of life. I need to acknowledge that everything is slower, that this is ingrained in who they are. So when you need, your internet goes out and you want the person to come right away, they're probably, downstairs having a coffee before they get to your apartment. Like you can't have it both ways. You kind of just have to know, like, I came here for the slower pace of life. It's going to be everyone. That's how they live. It's going to be ingrained in everyone. So I just need to, relax a little bit.
Yeah. Cost of living, one that's a particularly a hot topic in Portugal, is also a bit of a hot topic in Spain. So what have you, we talked about this actually a bit on the last discussion we had, but what are some of the things that you've really noticed that the price has gone up since you moved to Portugal?
I think that, this is always a good topic to actually circle back to because it's always changing. Housing has been talked about a lot here for quite a while, and it has gotten out of control. I do think that it is kind of like stabilizing, but it's never going to go back down to how it was. But honestly, there was a lot of room for growth as the thing is like the, prices were so low, whether renting or buying. So it's hard to say that it would actually go back down to how that was. So I think it's stabilizing a bit more. But yeah, the housing prices are still quite high. There's a little bit of inflation that happens. And then, when you live in a city and there's a lot of things going on, you kind of find that you end up spending your money, even though it might be more affordable than where you came from, you're spending your money on a lot more things because you're like, oh, this is affordable, so, oh, this glass of wine is only €2, so you end up drinking more wine than you would back in the US or your home country. So I think that cost of living wise, housing is definitely something that is hard because also too, like the more affordable ones are maybe living situations that you don't want to be in. Maybe one of the big things here is on the inside during the winter, sometimes it's colder in your apartment than it is outside your apartment because they've not done great with insulation. It can be bad. And so, okay, those might be cheaper prices, but you're also are miserable in the winter because you're having to wear like your coat inside. So if you want to have like a nicer living accommodation, then you're going to end up paying for it. So definitely housing is one thing. And then, groceries, they've gone up a little bit, but some of it depends on where you shop. If you're more central in one of the cities, then it'll obviously be more expensive because of the real estate that the grocery store has. But one thing that I have noticed for us is our grocery bill has gone up. But where we live, it's very convenient to get to a grocery store. And so we do small runs more often. And for us, okay, we could go to a different store that's more affordable, but it's time versus money at that point. So while literally like right downstairs, 2 minutes away, there's a grocery store and we can go there and we know the prices are a little higher because of the location and the convenience. But, do we want to go out 20 minutes away? By metro, let's say, to save a little bit. Our time, like with the workflow, it's probably makes more sense for us to just, spend a little more. So I think you have to kind of take that into consideration because every year we do this cost of living video where we just live our normal life for 30 days and we log every euro that we spend. And so it's always interesting to see. So we don't change our lifestyle. We don't think about like, I can't buy this because I'm logging it right now. Like we just live our normal life so that people can see what our lifestyle is like, how often we go out to eat, what are extracurriculars that we do, what do we spend our money on, and then how much that is after 30 days. So for a month. And so we just recently did one and our grocery bill was a lot higher, but I think it's because we've moved into a new place and we are closer to a grocery store. And so we're there more frequently and the prices are higher, and people were getting upset saying, oh, you should go to this place and this place to like get cheaper groceries. And yes, while that is true, we acknowledge that. We don't want to take an hour out of in the middle of our day to go do that. We'd rather be working instead. So it's a little bit of time versus money, but this is where a budget is really important.
Definitely. I think as well, something that's often missed is like doing smaller runs as well. You probably only buy what you need, so you reduce food waste as well. Whereas you might have more food waste if you're going further.
Yeah, definitely. And that is an adjustment, I think, for Americans as well, because we're quite used to, since it's a car culture, we're quite used to getting in the car, driving to the grocery store, and doing big runs. Even like, growing up, I have two older brothers, so we're a family of five. And I know my parents would, in the van, there's certain stores like they're called Sam's Club or Costco. And I mean, Costco is in the south of Spain, but this big bulk, you just buy so much. And I think when you're feeding many kids, then it makes sense. But like you have this mindset of just buying in bulk. But you also have the space to put it. Like we live in homes, right? We've got big pantries. Whereas like right now we live in the center of the city in an apartment. So there's just not even space to buy this big bulk, stuff. But like you're saying, you just buy smaller batches and reduce food waste, get fresh stuff as well, more frequently.
Yeah. I think what you're saying, this is my observation in Spain, and I think the same is probably true for a lot of Portugal as well, is that neighborhoods seem to be designed such that you can have everything you need for everyday living in that one neighborhood. There might be one or two things you need to go outside of the neighborhood a little bit for, or drive a little bit to get there, like, I don't know, maybe to take your car to the garage. But even then, you got like a lot of garages in the neighborhood as well. And a lot of people, now I think is maybe because of the cost of living situation in Spain and housing, there's people that commute into the city for work. But I think in the past it was very common, for people to live very close to work, to the point where like people would think a 30-minute commute was like, whoa, that's really far. Whereas, if you're doing that in the US, that's a pretty sweet deal. And in the UK, like a 30-minute commute is probably pretty normal as well.
Yeah.
But in Spain, like the culture of the past and what people like, how the neighborhoods are designed, what I'm saying is it's quite different.
Yeah, I think there's that saying, it's like a 15-minute radius location where it's like everything that you need is literally within 15 minutes of you, like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, me and my wife, like we rarely need to take the car to go somewhere and get something. It's got to be something like pretty specific that we can't find in the neighborhood if we need to get in a car and go somewhere. Otherwise, we can pretty much walk everywhere to get what we need.
Yeah, same with us. Like we don't own a car, so there's metro buses. We walk a lot. We live very centrally, so which we love, especially again coming from the U.S. where it's such a car culture. But Portugal's pretty car culture as well. Like all of our Portuguese friends have cars, and I think it's weird that we don't. So, I mean, I think that but they view it differently as well, but they're okay driving in and out of the city, sitting in that kind of traffic. But for them, it is like a 30-minute drive somewhere outside city is far. Whereas Americans were like, that's nothing. Like, like that's an easy drive. So it is a kind of a different mentality, but I mean, all of our Portuguese friends have cars and drive.
Okay, good. Yeah. So how about if we were to talk about how the city you're living in has changed you? Is there something you've picked up or gained from living in Porto, or is there something that you've lost since living in Porto?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think definitely have gained safety. Like I love being able to live in a city, have all the amenities like we were talking about, but still feel safe, be able to walk around. I was actually thinking about this. I was on the bus the other day and I was standing, like it was pretty busy. And my purse was kind of a little bit behind me and my daughter was sitting in the seat there. So I was standing kind of close to her and, people would be walking in and out. My purse would get bumped. I think in any other place, I would have had my purse right in front of me. If it was bumped, I would have checked it. But like being in Portugal, it kept getting bumped and I didn't think anything of it. And then I thought, it's nice. I don't have to think anything of like someone's maybe trying to get into my purse, and I don't have to be so like, oh, it's like right here. So, that stuff is not common at all. I know in Spain, pickpocketing is a lot more common. And here, like in Lisbon, you definitely have to be a lot more careful. And Porto, it's starting to change a little bit as we see the growth happening. Like I do know people who have had stuff stolen from them. So it's smart to like be more aware. But I think I've been here for so long and, before this shift happened that I gained like just that comfortable, like safety feel, especially as a female too. Like if I want to go out with a friend at night when it's dark, I don't feel uncomfortable walking home on my own. So different things like that. So I think definitely gaining like safety, gaining just that more relaxed feel of I have the time to spend with my daughter. I'm not working all the time to where I can't go to her different events. Like so for example, like she'll have we'll get a notification that we have a school meeting and I don't have to ask my boss to take off of work to go to that meeting, or like she's does ballet, for example, and they, will have, okay, we're having like a little show. and I can just, go to that. I have that time. I'm able to do that. So I think that stuff's invaluable to me. So definitely gaining, those things. One thing that I have lost, I would say, being in Portugal is because my Portuguese, I mean, I've been practicing and learning Portuguese, but because I'm still at, I would say, like an A2 level with, communication, I feel like I speak still like in very simple sentences. I generally keep it in present tense because I can never remember on the fly, I feel like what I've lost is I can't fully express myself in Portuguese when I want to. And I am an outgoing person, and there are times when I would speak with, like, so for example, like when I get my nails done, or the lady that does my nails also does massages, and so I love her. She's Portuguese. She doesn't speak any English. So like when we're doing nails, she's so nice. I've been going to her for so long. I would love to have a deeper conversation than just like the typical, where have you been traveling to? How's your daughter? And like, those types of things, which is nice. But like, I just feel so limited. And I just wish I could go a little deeper. And part of it has been tough too, because like, especially again, where we live, that's very central. A lot of people speak English, and all our Portuguese friends speak amazing English. So we're always speaking in English. I'm not forced to like, hey, like it's survival, right? To only speak Portuguese. So this is why I can definitely see that like my progression is slower. But I think that's something that I would express myself a lot more if I knew the language better.
Yeah. Do you think that, not older adults, but, like the further on in life you go, like the more likely you are to stick within a similar kind of group to yourself? Because I think about my example, like I'm in my 30s now, but the experiences I've had of living abroad in my 20s, like I felt much more able to and much more willing to like go and mix in with locals. Now, I mean, yes, I would definitely still do it, but I don't know if I'd have the same, like free spirit to just walk in and do it like it's nothing. Like I'd feel a bit more self-conscious about it, maybe. And I think that could, be a bit of a barrier sometimes in picking up the language skills and becoming more comfortable.
It definitely can. And I think that's a bit of a personality and being comfortable kind of thing, because that's how I feel. Like I don't want to sound like an idiot, and so then I try less, or I know they speak English, so I just switch to English. Whereas my husband is very, like, he's gotten much better because he's like, no, like I know you speak English, but we're doing this in Portuguese. Like let me practice and let it become more natural. But I think older adults, it really depends on the personality, because I know plenty of people who just have like a very spunky personality, and they're able to laugh at themselves fumbling through the Portuguese, or they're like, you know what, I'm not going to let that be a crutch. I'm going to go and do this thing I want to do, and if we have to pantomime or whatever, or now like speaking to Google, like I'm going to do it. Whereas there are others who that is mortifying to them, like they would never want to do that or put themselves in that situation. So I think a lot depends on the personality of someone and how they feel. If they're like, you know what, I don't want to be like, feel like an idiot, so I'm not going to do it. Whereas others are like, I don't care if I look like an idiot, I'm doing it. And so it kind of depends.
I think sometimes it's not even the start that's difficult. It's kind of the middle phase where you're good enough to be beyond a beginner, but
Yes.
you need to push that a little bit harder to get yourself to a level of greater fluency. I think that's probably where it gets more difficult, because there's more commitment and study and learning involved, I would
That's
say.
definitely where I am. It's like you do so well and you get past the normal, beginner stuff, but then it's like you plateau and you really have to push yourself and be consistent to not plateau and just go. And so the thing that's hard though is like with the world, moving around us so quickly, like, with work and with having a daughter and with, working out. This is another thing that I try to do. So all the things that, like, I want to fit into a day, while, I will be like, okay, I need to study Portuguese. The first thing to go when the day gets too busy would be studying Portuguese. And it's just all too easy because it's like self-guided at this point. Like I'm not in a class. We used to take classes and that was really great and you learn really well because like you're forced. You have a class time, right? But when you're, you have to be really self-disciplined if you're doing it on your own. And also a priority too, I know like it sounds terrible saying this, but like right now, for example, when I do have that little bit of time, I'm prioritizing working out. So like if I have to choose one or the other, because I can't fit both into the day, the priority is working out. So, and I think it also has to do because I don't have to survive off of Portuguese completely. Like I know that I can go and speak English. So maybe if it was like a survival thing and I needed Portuguese, I would then be like, I need to study a little more so that I can actually go out and live my life.
Yeah. I think definitely time is obviously a challenge, but I know for myself, I've always tried to find ways to naturally integrate languages into my daily life. Like whether it's, if my downtime is like watching a movie or a TV series, I'll try and watch something in that language. Or if I'm walking to the gym, or when it was back in the day to university, like I'd put on even just a summary of the news in like French or Spanish, which I was learning at the time. And that's like, it's 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. But if you consistently do that, you'll pick up little words, like phrases, sentence structures here and there. And it's all progress, like even if it's not at the pace you would like.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like sometimes I just forget to do that. Like I'll just forget to, oh, you know what, let's just turn on the news. Like I think this is again where my husband's a lot better at it. And I think because right now too, he is making it a point to study every day. So I think he's thinking of those things. So like he'll just turn the TV on with the news, and so it's like, okay, we have that exposure. But yeah, sometimes just kind of getting into a routine and a habit of doing it, then you start doing it and then it starts sticking. But like sometimes I'll be like I'll go on the bus to pick up my daughter from school. And, I'm generally working, checking emails and stuff, but it's a time that I could be like, maybe I should be doing something in Portuguese, but it's just, since it's not routine, I just forget about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think probably both you and I agree on this, is that in both Portugal and Spain, I think in both countries, more, to a greater extent or to a lesser extent, depending on where you are, you probably can survive with English, but by not learning the language, you're depriving yourself of experiences, a fuller, more in-depth exposure and immersion of both cultures.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Or just like I mentioned, like I would love to have a deeper conversation about what, life is like for the lady who does my nails, but I can't,
Yeah.
So yeah, when you do put more into it, then yeah, it just becomes a richer life and understanding culturally. I will say this though, I do know we have some friends who have gotten really good at Portuguese, who are like B2 C1, and there is also a flip, because I think the bad thing to it is you start like understanding everyone around you. So you start hearing some of the negative things that when you don't know the language, you're kind of just like walking and you've got your blinders on. So you don't realize that someone's complaining about the president, or that there's, this, you know what I mean? Like all the things that every country does. Like when you don't know the language, you're just cruising through life and everything's great here, right? But if you do know the language, then you start to hear these things and people complaining and bickering and talking about the negative things. And so we have some friends who are like, it's kind of switched. You're like, oh gosh, now I understand what everyone's saying.
Yeah, definitely true. And maybe that's a point where, ignorance is bliss in some cases.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying like this is why you should not learn the language, but I am saying it is something that I think that people don't think about. That like, when you learn the language well enough, then you are exposing yourself to all the things that maybe like you don't like about your own country, or the reasons you left your own country, and you think, oh, they don't do that here. But it's like every country does that. Every country has the people talking about whatever it might be. And so it's like you're going to start exposing yourself to that. So just be ready for it. That's all.
Totally, yeah. But you do gain a much deeper insight into the country, how it works, and some of those problems, let's say, by being able to understand it. Because, I think in English, both Spain and Portugal have had headlines in the international press about things going on locally, whereas you get the surface level version in English, but you don't really have the full story, and you can only really get that, I think, in some cases by understanding the local language and seeing how it's being reported locally, how it's being talked about locally as well by people.
Different sources as well, as we know, like anything can be skewed. So if you only have one source in English, who knows if it is skewed or if it's too surfacey, but like being able to look into it yourself. And then also too, I do believe like if you're going to, if you have goals of becoming a citizen, or something where you're going to be voting at some point, or at least are able to vote, like, oh, okay, then you need to familiarize yourself with how the system works and your rights as well. And then if you do want to vote, like obviously educating yourself on that. So knowing the language is important, and knowing the system like that you live in is important too.
Yeah, totally. Does Portugal have a language requirement for nationality applications?
They do. Yeah. So currently it's only A2. So which
Same
is,
as Spain.
yeah, I mean, which is like okay, like you can get by, but yeah, you can't have a conversation about government, with A2. I mean, that's probably even the C levels. I'm not going to go speak to parliament here. So those are really high levels, right? But yeah, so right now to apply for citizenship, which the as of this recording, the law hasn't changed. It is still 5 years, but they're
It's
looking to
still
move it to 10
pending.
years. Yeah, it still hasn't changed. And so there are talks as well of increasing it to B1. So we'll see what happens. But right now, it's A2.
Okay, yeah. So, to kind of bring this all together, Kalie, if you were to meet someone or talk with someone who was decided between Portugal and Spain, what would you tell them, or what do you think are the deciding factors that might sway someone one way or the other?
Oh, that's tricky because everyone's a little different. So I think you kind of have to think of your non-negotiables. What's something that you have a hard line on? Whatever that might be, that's going to be different for everyone. And then also thinking about your overall goals. Is it to one day get citizenship? Well, then at that point, especially right now, Portugal is better. What kind of visa are you coming in on? That's another big one, like what you actually qualify for and how you want to apply. And then just overall lifestyle, because they are so similar, it's hard to say like one's going to be better than the other because a lot will depend on what city you're in and what overall lifestyle you do want. So I think you have to maybe like research both and then narrow it down. So for example, like if you like to surf, well then you've got a lot of options in Portugal. But if you like to go to the beach and just get in the water and it's nice and comfortable, then you're probably looking at Spain because the Mediterranean is much warmer than the Atlantic. Okay, if you want to be close to the beach, you don't need to go to the beach, but you want to see water, well, then you're probably looking at pricing, sizing of cities as well, which, I think at that point, Spain's probably a little better for pricing and options for those types of accommodations. But I think you just have to think of your non-negotiables and then the route that you want to go to get to that specific country. And then start from there. Then you can start to kind of pare down on actual location.
Yeah, fair enough. I think if we take out, obviously like administrative visa tax things, I think it probably comes down to in Spain, you can get more of an international lifestyle in cities like Madrid and Barcelona. You can maybe get it in Lisbon probably as well to a similar extent. I think you probably got a bit more geographic diversity in Spain as well in terms of beach, mountains, big city as well. Like diet as well. I think the Portuguese diet is very much, seafood based.
Oh, I'm going to push back on that. I'm pushing back.
Oh God, correct me, please. I may be wrong.
Yeah, they're obviously.
Don't kill me in the comments, people who are watching.
Because of the Atlantic, of course, you have a lot of seafood, but because of the interior, they eat a lot of pork as well, and they actually do a lot of meat. So there's a lot of meat-based dishes as well. So I think this is interesting because there is actually a decent amount of variety with Portuguese food. I think that people just always see on lists like the same 3 things or something, and they do a lot of cod dishes. There is that, but they do have more variety than just seafood. So I will say they do have a lot of variety, not just seafood. So that's why I'm going to push back. But on the other hand, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you on there are more like second and third cities that the infrastructure and the amenities are better than what is offered here in Portugal. So of course we've got Lisbon as the capital city, which for a capital city it's quite small and isn't as good as a Madrid, for example. And then the second city being Porto, third city being Braga. But then you see like a big drop off. So like the second and third cities that exist here, they don't have great infrastructure. They don't have great connectivity. Whereas in Spain, you have loads of options for like, even if you're talking about like a Malaga or a Valencia or even just for us, like going up to Vigo, like you see that there's more going on in these cities. So I think that you do have more options of places that will tick more boxes and maybe some of those non-negotiables, like I mentioned, in Spain compared to Portugal. In Portugal, you're a little pigeonholed because you don't really want to get out into like a small village. It's going to feel very isolating and hard to adapt. As opposed to Spain, I think you have more options. So I will agree with you on that one.
Yeah. I think also depending on what kind of set up in terms of income and lifestyle, that can also determine where you go as well. Because I think, in Lisbon, I think there are probably, there's big companies operating. But I think, understanding the cost of living situation, particularly versus the wages, it can make it very challenging for some people. Not that the same thing isn't necessarily happening in Spain, but I think there's a lot more professional opportunities in Spain perhaps than in Portugal. Again, we can't compare to Spain necessarily with like the UK or the US or Northern European countries in terms of professional opportunities, but still, for the opportunities that are there, I think Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia to some extent maybe edge it over the likes of Lisbon.
No, I agree. I think that we're seeing growth here, and a lot of for example, tech is coming in, and so startups and tech companies. So we're seeing that happen, but there's still room for growth, and this is where Spain I think is better. So if you're looking for a job and job opportunities, then it's probably better. But if you're bringing a remote job, then, depending on where you want to live, you might find that your money goes a little further here. Kind of just depends.
Yeah, then I think it comes back to kind of the taxation and visa things, because that's where, there's a number of different things you can play with where it might be more favorable in one place versus another.
Yeah. But overall, I mean, lifestyle-wise, again, because they are similar, I think you can find happiness in either one. And a lot of that is about your mentality and how you go into it and how you want to go into it and your overall expectations. But I think that you could definitely be happy in either.
Totally. And you can come in with a good attitude, looking to enjoy the positive aspects of it. Because if you come in with a negative mindset, you can easily fall into this is not like back home. It doesn't have this, and then you just find yourself complaining and not really, the experience is not what you wanted it to be. You didn't get what you came for. So.
Exactly.
Great. Kalie, this was a great conversation. I hope the viewers as well enjoyed it. And we'll have to connect again soon for another video.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed that video and found it useful and interesting. Leave a comment and let me know, are you thinking of moving to Spain or to Portugal? And has anything we've said in this conversation swayed you one way or the other? And if you like this video and you want to see more videos about Spain or about Portugal, then be sure to check out these two videos here. Till next time, I'll see you on the next one. And let's get this money.